As I promised last year, we went sailing in the Aegean again this summer. This time the whole trip lasted 14 days. We had a slightly smaller boat and sailed through the western Cyclades all the way down to the southern tip of the Peloponnese. From there we followed the western coastline and looped back toward Athens through the Argolic and Saronic Gulf. There's a lot to share about anchorages, winds, bays and incredible places we visited, so I've divided the story into 3 parts. In this first episode, we'll look at our preparations, the sail to Milos and some exploring around the island. Weather. Especially the wind is probably the most important part of the sailing safety. That's why I always start checking the forecast a few days before we head out. It helps us choose the safest and the most comfortable direction to go. I mostly use Windy, which lets you compare different weather models for free. Recently, I also been checking Sky. But apps aren't everything. You also need to know the local conditions. So for every bay we plan to visit, I read up in my favorite sailing guidebook. This is my book. Just like last year, temperatures rose quickly a week before we arrived, almost 40 degrees in Athens. And when it gets that hot, it's often a sign that the meltemi wind is coming, and sure enough, we got some great wind for the start of our journey. It calmed down after a few days, which later gave us a smoother crossing from Milos to the southern Peloponnese. Destination. The goal for the first leg of the trip was Milos. From there, we'd make a long crossing to Elafonisos, then follow the west coast of the Peloponnese to Nafplio and slowly make our way back to Athens. In this first video, we'll sail from Athens to Milos, stop at a few islands along the way, and wrap up with a look at what Milos has to offer. Logistics. As always, I chartered the boat through my regular provider. They give me a good deal and I trust them completely. We flew into Athens. From the airport, it's really easy to get to Piraeus. The X96 bus runs every 30 minutes straight from the terminal to the port. We arrived one day early, so we booked a hotel close to the marina. Since our flight landed around noon, we had time in the afternoon to take the slowest possible ride from Alimos to downtown Athens, the Olympic tram, and catch the changing of guard at Syntagma Square. Provisioning. Provisioning could easily be a whole video by itself, maybe next time. But for now, just the basics. About a kilometer from our pier, there's a big supermarket where we bought everything we needed. We prepared a shopping list ahead of time. Then we adjusted it to match our personal preferences and our previous experience. One big tip: don't overbuy. Trust me, buy at least 20% less than you planned. At the store, you leave your ID at the register and they let you take their cards outside. But be warned, with all the traffic and the hidden slopes, you don't realize how steep it is until your cart starts rolling away. We bought a few extra things later on Milos, but just a heads up, prices there are much higher. Day 1. Alimos to Anavissos.
Olympia Radio, this is Sailboat Anerada. We are performing radio check. How do you read me? Over.
We read you loud and clear.
Thank you for the confirmation. Over and out.
If the wind has been too strong, we would have head toward Aegean or Poros first. That way, we could have waited a day or two for better weather before sailing to the islands. But since the forecast looked good, a beam wind with gusts up to 25 knots, we kindly set off on our original route. For me, Anavissos is a classic first night stop when heading toward the Cyclades. Even in stronger meltemi winds, it offers a safe anchorage. It's not ideal for southerly winds, but those aren't very common in the summer. The bay here has better holding and much more space than nearby Sunium. Day 2. Anavissos to Kythnos. The sail from Anavissos to Colonna Bay and Kithnos took about 6 hours. We left fairly early, so we arrived around midday and had the whole afternoon for the swimming and exploring.
Добре, ще дай 5 метров.
We actually had to anchor twice. The anchor didn't hold the first time, and there was also some crosswind. Even in the bay, winds were still blowing up to 20 knots. We visited the nearby hot spring when the water temperature is close to 40 degrees. We took a walk up the hill on the southern side of the sandbar that separates Colonna from Fikiada Bay. We chose Colonna Bay because it's closer and the nearby hot spring. If it had been too crowded, we would have continued to the bay on the other side. The taverna was closed, despite the number of boats around, so we made dinner on board. Day 3. Kythnos to Serifos. This morning we didn't rush. It was about a 4-hour sail to Megalolivadi Bay on Serifos. With a beam wind around 15 knots and waves up to 1 meter, it was a fairly comfortable crossing. Still, in Greece, winds usually pick up in the afternoon, especially pick up near islands. As we entered the bay, we got gusts up to 30 knots, so maneuvers for lowering sails required a bit more focus. The bay itself is interesting because of the old mining industry, and it offers much better protection from meltemi than the main port where we were last year. There's a large industrial mooring buoy right in the middle of the bay, in about 5 meters of water. Additionally to that, there is also a heavy chain that runs across the bay, so be careful when laying anchor down. One item I'd definitely recommend is stainless steel shackle. That way you can tie your rope directly to the buoy using snorkel instead of dropping your anchor. In the village there are 2 tavernas. Prices were lower than expected, and beside us there weren't any foreigners around. So we had found a place where most locals didn't even speak English. Day 4. Serifos, Sifnos, Milos. Once again we set off early. This would be our longest leg so far, about 8 hours of sailing. We made a small detour to Sifnos, where we stopped in Vati Bay for a quieter breakfast at anchor. Outside was too choppy for breakfast on the way, so this was a great place to pause. And also to check our possible future anchorage. We continued sailing between Milos and Polygos. In the narrow passage, the wind funneled between the islands picked up sharply. We had gusts well over 30 knots, and we had to reef the sails down to a minimum. Once we cleared Milos and were back on open water, the wind eased. In Greece, it often blows stronger behind and around islands than in front of them, so don't count on shelter. Sometimes the lee is windier than you would expect. Always check local bay conditions before deciding to anchor. And yes, my guidebook again. This one. When we entered the caldera of Milos, it was still too windy to fly the drone and film Klima, so the aerial shots you will see are not actually from that day. Luckily, the wind died down as we reached Adamas, and mad mooring was fairly easy. Though judging by the location of our boat position in the dock, the taverna we picked for dinner was very far away. Day 5. Exploring Milos. We stayed on Milos for 2 nights. Since we planned to leave very early in the morning of the departure day, we first considered moving the boat to avoid possible issues with crossed anchor chains in the morning. But we dropped the idea after checking the position of nearby boats. On one side, there was a large catamaran with a professional crew who had laid their anchor and chain far from ours. On the other side, local charter boats were tied to regular rope moorings. So we stayed in a harbor for a second night as well. That gave us a full day to explore Milos. We had already booked a car the night before, so we picked it up early in the morning. It was parked just a few steps away, similar like our first night taverna. We visited the village of Klima, the ancient theater, the catacombs, windmills, and hora, with its typical white houses. We also stopped at the famous beach, Sarakiniko, though it's not really a beach, but it's definitely worth a visit. And of course, we went to Mandrakia, home to the island's most popular seafood restaurant. Even though it was still early afternoon, people already lined for a table. About my obsession with obsidian. Everyone says there is no more obsidian left to find on the island because there was a mine of obsidian in the ancient times. We still spotted it over the first location I had marked as promising. Obsidian is volcanic glass which can be flaked into blades that are sharper than scalpel. And just to break the routine, we ended the evening at the taverna, which was a few minutes away from the boat this time. Costs. Besides the boat rental, this time about 3,000 euro for a 3-cabin yacht for 1 week, we spent around 600 euros on groceries in Alimos plus another 100 on Milos. We ate at taverna 3 times till then, with prices averaging about 25 euros per person. Mooring in Milos cost us 15 euros for the first night plus 3 euros for the second night. So 18 euros in total, including water and electricity. The rental car with insurance included cost us 100 euros. The sailboat. We sailed a 3-cabin Sun Odyssey 419. It was very well equipped and in excellent condition. Honestly, it felt more like a privately owned boat than a typical charter. We could use one more solar power cell, but everything else was at the level you'd expect. In terms of space, it's incredibly roomy for its length. The cockpit easily fits more than 6 people. With 5 of us on board, we had more than enough water. By the time we reached Milos, we had barely used half of one tank. Boat has 2. The only downside, compared to the last year 490, was the speed. This boat was noticeably slower. Even on a wave, we barely broke 7 knots. On average, was under 6. But when it comes to safety, the boat was well equipped. Over 80 meters of anchor chain.
This is a chain. We have 80 meters.
80 meters.
Life raft, an e-perp, and even 2 50-meter floating line, among, of course, all the other usual gear.
These are
Two yellow lines.
Floating lines, 50 meters rope,
The best
each one, to connect to
the shore.
shore.
Conclusion. So, the first third of our Greek sailing circle is complete. But the real adventure continues in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you found enough useful information to make you want to watch more. Before we wrap things up, I invite you to check out the next part. You'll find the link at the end of this video. It will start with the 16-hour passage from Milos to Elafonisos on the southern coast of the Peloponnese. You'll also see how we caught a couple of amazing fish, how a strong wind changed our plans and forced us to wait near Monemasia, and how we finally arrived to beautiful Nafplio. Will we go again? Not only that we will go, but even you can join us next year. Next year we are planning a 4 or even 5-week cruise with a cabin or 2 available each week for anyone who wants to join. Crew changes will happen in Milos, Nafplio, and maybe Poros or even Piraeus. For more info, feel free to contact me and follow my videos where I'll explain everything in detail. You can also check my Facebook profile Ventus Waves Sailing in Greece. I'm really grateful for your audience, for your likes, for your subscribes and your general support. Please feel free to check out my other videos and don't forget the second and third part of our Greek sailing adventure. Thank you again and see you soon. Bye!